So it's been over a year now since we first got our hands on Insurgency Sandstorm, and in that time, I've got to say it's come a long way. Like a lot of indie shooters, it didn't have the smoothest start, but the question is it worth playing now in 2019? Well guys, this is BillyEatWorld again, and let's find out. Alright, so to kick off, I should start by saying that look, to say that any game is the best at any one particular thing is obviously gonna be just an opinion, right? But honestly, I really think Insurgency Sandstorm stands on its own in 2019. Sure, there's a lot of similar games, but nothing really that ticks all of the boxes that it does. If you haven't played it before, well, it's kind of like a mix of older Battlefield games like BF4, as well as, for example, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and even a little bit of CSGO. But then again, it's something different as well. It's way more realistic and way more gritty. It doesn't hold your hands, and most importantly, it doesn't care if you love or hate that. Another thing I've got to mention is that being an indie game, it's not going to be quite as polished as a AAA game or have quite as many active players, and I've got to admit that was an issue it had at launch. It had a lot of performance issues that needed to be worked out, and the player base did suffer a bit while the devs got that under control. Well, fast forward a year, and in 2019, the game plays better than it ever has. It's still not as pretty as, for example, a game like Battlefield, but it's better than decent, and it's only getting better. And a big part of that is because the devs are super responsive to community feedback. They're always patching problems and adding new content, which, if I haven't already mentioned, is always free. Now, with that being said, even though so many games these days don't live up to those basic expectations, everything I just mentioned isn't really enough to make a game outstanding. Making a great game is like following a recipe. You don't necessarily need to do anything crazy, you just need to follow all the steps and make sure that everything is there and balanced. For example, Insurgency has got similar based game modes to Battlefield on tighter, more close quarters maps like you'd see in Call of Duty. But then on the other hand, it's also predictable and competitive like CSGO, and it's got a fast TTK like Rainbow Six Siege. Like I said, nothing crazy, just a well-balanced mix of good ingredients. And that mix, I think, is the reason it stands out for me as something special. For example, it's a more modern style shooter than a game like CSGO. It's got ADS, for example, and a more complex recoil system. But on the other hand, it's not quite the same as Battlefield either. The servers are only about half the player cap, and with a wave spawn system, it really slows down the tempo and allows you to think about what you're doing. That's not to say that you can't run and gun though in this game. In fact, another really cool thing is that it's got a complex loadout customization system that ties into a really deep stamina system. And that means you can sit back and snipe or charge in with an SMG or do pretty much anything else you can do in a Battlefield game. It all comes down to smart loadout choices. Now, like I said before, to say that any game is the best at the end of the day is an opinion-based thing, and what I like might not necessarily be anything like what you like. You might completely hate this game, for example, but if you do like any of the other shooter franchises I've mentioned already in this video, chances are you won't mind sinking a few hours into this one. Most importantly though, if you've previously been a fan of any of those other shooters, well, I think one of the things Insurgency does so well is to target the features other franchises have moved away from. Like, for example, if you're frustrated at not being able to play hardcore rush or customized weapon attachments in a game like Battlefield 5, well, don't worry, because Sandstorm has got all of that covered. Just before we finish up though, with that being said, so far we've talked a lot about AAA shooters, but how does Sandstorm match up to other indie shooters? And well, even though there are a lot of other really good hardcore indie shooters out there, for example on PC, basically none of them are available on console, mostly because they're just too complicated when it comes to the controls. Sandstorm, on the other hand, plays like a Battlefield game, and when it finally comes out on console in early 2020, it'll actually play decently enough on a controller. And like I said, there's already basically nothing out there exactly like this game, and especially nothing like it on console, which means I'm pretty sure when it does finally release on console, it's going to be huge, or at least big for an indie game. But anyway guys, that just about wraps up this video, so as always, make sure you let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of Insurgency Sandstorm? Do you think it's the best hardcore shooter? And if you don't, what do you think is actually the best? Let me know what you think down there as well. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and please feel free to check out the links in the description if you want to see any more of these videos. And also don't forget you can find my Twitter and Discord links down there as well if you want to keep in touch. And as always, until next time, see you later, and have a good one.